I know for us, life is so crazy busy during the fall and winter, so today I'm sharing with you 4 Instant Pot potato soup recipes that cook for 3 minutes or less. Let's get started with the first one. We're going to do a potato ham chowder. And this one is amazing because you can also make it into a freezer meal, and I have that video right over here. That means you put all of the ingredients in a bag and then you freeze it, and then you can throw that whole bag frozen into the Instant Pot and cook it in less than 3 minutes. It's pretty cool. So this recipe is really easy because we just dump pretty much everything except the dairy into the Instant Pot. So that's what we're gonna do today. We are going to start with 1 bag of potatoes O'Brien. Like, could you think of anything easier than using frozen potatoes in a potato soup? Okay, next we're going to use 8 ounces of cubed ham. I purchased mine just like this, but you can also do this recipe after Easter, Thanksgiving, Christmas, any of those holidays where you use a lot of, ham and you might have some left over. We'll do 1 can of corn. This is a great recipe because you can just dump everything in. So simple. Then our spices are just 1 tablespoon of minced garlic and 1 teaspoon of real salt. Just throw that in there. We've got a 1/4 cup of bacon crumbles. You can either cook and crumble this yourself, or I just use the bagged, pre-made bacon bits just to make it easy. And then we're gonna do 2 cups of chicken broth, and I always use 2 cups of water with 2 teaspoons of better than bouillon. So we'll just dump that straight over the top. Might have a little bit of residual bouillon in there. And that's really it. I'm just going to mix it all together. And literally that's all you have to do. So I'm going to put the lid on my Instant Pot. Make sure that knob is set to the sealing position, and then we're gonna cook this for 3 minutes on high pressure with a quick release, and then we'll add in just a couple extra ingredients. The potato ham chowder is done, so we are just going to vent it. And this is what it looks like. It looks and smells amazing. We're just gonna mix it up a little bit. The potatoes are soft, smells like corn, ham, oh man. And those onions and peppers from the potatoes O'Brien, they really help give it that extra that you really need, that flavor. To this, we are just going to add 1 cup of heavy cream. If you don't want to do cream, I'm sorry. You could do half and half, you could do milk, but it just won't be quite as thick and creamy. So 1 cup of heavy cream, 1/2 cup of sour cream, and then we'll give that a little stir. We want to bring down the temperature just a little bit before we add the cheese, so then it doesn't curdle and seize the cheese. Oh my gosh, this looks so good. Okay, and then to that we're just gonna add about 1/2 cup of cheddar cheese, or however much your heart desires, because things like cheese, garlic, they should be measured with your heart. And that is it. That literally took 20 minutes all in, and that is pretty freaking cool. And we used frozen potatoes. We didn't have to chop up the potatoes, we didn't have to chop up the peppers or the onions. We used a can of corn. That one is so simple and easy. We've got potato ham chowder, so good for fall. All of these recipes can be found in my cookbook, the I Love My Instant Pot Cooking for One book. All of the recipes are scaled down for a single serving, so they're about 2-cup portions, and they are just as good as the original. You can pick up this book anywhere books are sold. You can find it on Amazon, Target, Barnes & Noble, any book distributor, and I know you'll love it. This next recipe for loaded baked potato soup is a reader favorite, and you can make this recipe using frozen hash brown potatoes like I am today, just because it's super easy, or you can cut up your own potatoes, or you can even use leftover mashed potatoes. Let's get started by turning our Instant Pot to the high saute function, and then I'm going to add 3 to 5 pieces of thick cut bacon. Now, I definitely recommend using the thick cut bacon so then there's enough fat and flavor in the soup. So I have just a couple pieces of bacon that we're gonna add to our Instant Pot and crisp up. Here's a quick tip on your bacon. If you put your bacon in the freezer for about 20 minutes before you cut it, it will cut way easier. The fat will solidify in the bacon and you'll just be able to slice right through it without it getting slimy and all over the place. And did you know when you cut bacon into little chunks like this, they're called bacon lardons. So when you see that in recipes, you'll now know cutting bacon into lardons is little pieces. The bacon's done crisping and I just scooped it out and put it in a separate bowl. Then you should have about a 1/4 cup of bacon grease in there, and that's totally fine. Just keep that in because we want to keep that flavor and a little bit of that fat. So to this, we are going to add 1 tablespoon of minced garlic, 1 2-pound bag of hash brown potatoes, and you can use regular potatoes if you like. I've got those instructions on my website. Next, we have 2 tablespoons of onion flakes, a teaspoon of salt, and 1/2 teaspoon of pepper. And just like the last recipe, this one's so awesome because you can pre-prepare this and use it as a freezer meal. Just put all these ingredients in a bag and prepare it from frozen, so it's really easy. Okay, mix that around for a minute. And then we're going to add 2 cups of chicken broth. I always use 2 cups of hot water with 2 teaspoons of Better Than Bouillon. Let's mix this up a little bit. Perfect. If you like, you can add a little bit of that bacon to cook in with it, but I prefer to sprinkle it on the top because I think it just kind of looks prettier, but you can also cook it in the soup as well. And that's it. We're gonna put the lid on it. We're gonna cook it for 3 minutes from frozen, and then we'll add a couple extra ingredients at the end. The loaded baked potato soup is ready to come out, so I just turned the knob from the sealing to the venting position, and this is what it looks like. Now this is the fun part. After you pressure cook the loaded potato soup, you're going to take a potato masher and just mash these potatoes up about 5 or 8 times, just to kind of break up some of those potatoes. We don't want to make mashed potatoes, so we're just going to mash it up just a little bit to still have some chunks, but not too many. It will be pretty thick. I think that looks pretty good. If you don't like any chunks at all, you can like mash it till you make mashed potatoes, and that's totally fine too. To this, we are going to add 1 cup of heavy cream because heavy cream just makes everything more delicious. If you don't want to use cream, you can use milk, 1/2 and 1/2. And then this is what makes it taste like loaded baked potato soup. It's 1 cup of sour cream. This is so good. That sour cream is really important because it makes it taste like an actual loaded baked potato and not just potato soup. Okay, we're cooling it down just a little bit here before we add the cheese because we don't want the cheese to curdle or seize. And then we've got 1 cup of shredded cheddar cheese. I always add extra on top of each bowl. I like to let that kind of melt down. I also like adding some of the bacon back into the soup, but I also like having a lot of it to kind of put on top of each bowl just because then it's really pretty. But we can put some of that in there as well. If you would like, you can also do some freeze-dried chives, real chives, green onions into the soup, or I find like a lot of kids don't really like green stuff in their soup, so I usually just top each bowl with that as well. Oh my gosh, this is so good. Okay, and that's it. This only cooked for 3 minutes. It used a frozen bag of potato hash browns, and it tastes like you slaved over it all day. Enjoy! I love this one so much. We're making Zuppa Toscana, which is a yummy Italian soup. You may have had it at Olive Garden, but my version is way better. So first we're going to start out by sauteing a 1/2 pound of thick cut bacon in the Instant Pot and then taking that out after it has crisped up. I've already done that here. And then I leave about 2 tablespoons of the bacon grease inside the pan. Next we're gonna add 1 chopped onion, and I just use pre-chopped onion, right in there with all of that bacon grease. And then we're gonna do 1 pound of Jimmy Dean sausage. I find that the Jimmy Dean brand is actually like worth splurging on. I don't really like using store brand sausage. This one just tastes really good. And since it's the main protein, I definitely recommend just spending a little bit extra to get the higher quality sausage. To the sausage and the onions, I'm adding 2 tablespoons of minced garlic. And then to this 1 teaspoon of salt, half a teaspoon of pepper, and half a teaspoon of crushed red pepper flakes. If you don't like it spicy, then just do just a pinch of the red pepper flakes. You still want that flavor. And then we're gonna use that little chopper masher thing that I bought on that Amazon video I did earlier this summer. And we want to just chop this all up. Try and lift up some of that fond on the bottom of the pot from the bacon. All those brown bits, that's all flavor that we want to suck off the bottom of the pot and scrape off. Okay, we'll let this saute for just a couple minutes until the meat is cooked through. While we are waiting for our sausage and onions to cut, I usually like to cut up my potatoes, so I'll show you how to do that. So I like to use russet potatoes because they have a really pretty skin on them. First thing I do is just cut them straight down the middle, like this, and then you'll put them on the widest base. And then we're going to cut them one more time down the middle, so now you have 4 potato quarters, and then you just go straight down the line in about 1/4 inch sections. You don't want them too thin or too thick. What you'll get here are these little triangle pieces of potato, and these are the perfect bite in Zuppa Toscana. So I'm just going to cut these all up. I use about 5 potatoes and put them in a bowl of water so then they don't turn brown while I get everything else ready. The meat and the onions are looking good. They don't have to be like 100% done, just like 90% done, because it's all gonna cook. Okay, to this, we are going to add 1 cup of chicken broth. So I have my chicken broth here. It's just 6 cups of water with 6 teaspoons of better than bouillon. I like to just do like 1 cup right at the beginning and then deglaze the pot. So the pot is still on saute mode. I'm just taking my ThermoWorks spatula, my silicone spatula, it's the best one out there, and just scrape everything off the bottom of the pot. We really want to make sure that all that flavor is lifted off the pot. So 1, we get that flavor and it tastes good. 2nd, because we don't want it to burn and get the burn notice. All right, it looks good. Okay, so to this we are going to add 5 potatoes. I think this is about 5 cups. 5 or 6 potatoes. I find 1 regular, like small to medium potato is usually about 1 cup. So I cut these up into little triangles like you can see here. It's very simple. Now we're gonna add the rest of our chicken broth. If you'd like to do a lower carb option, you can do cauliflower in place of the potatoes. If you like more meat, you can add an additional pound of sausage. I usually like to do 2 more cups of liquid when I do that. And if you want it dairy-free, there are options to do dairy-free. All of those details are on my website, trytestedandtrue.com. And that's it. I do not like to pressure cook with the crispy bacon in there because I feel like it kind of gets soggy. So I'm just going to cook this for 1 minute on high pressure. The reason it's only 1 minute is because everything else is cooked besides the potatoes, and these potatoes are super tiny. We don't want to make mashed potatoes, so we just want to cook these through. It only takes 1 minute. So we're gonna put the lid on and pressure cook for 1 minute. To cut the kale, make sure first that you wash it and look in all these little grooves to make sure there's not any little bugs in there. And then what I do is I just hold the very tip of the stem here and then just pull it right off. This middle stalk is really thick and very hard. It's not really good to eat. So you always want to make sure you strip that off. And then what I like to do is kind of have a bunch of the kale leaves like this. And then what I'd like to do is roll them up together. So I'll just kind of bunch everything like this and then roll it up really tightly. And then we are going to make little kale ribbons. I like doing the ribbons more than just like the big chunks because I think they look prettier in the soup. So we're just gonna do really thin ribbons of kale, about maybe a 1/4 inch. And if you have any straggly pieces like this, you can just kind of rip them up like that. But then we have these really pretty ribbons of kale that run throughout the soup, not these giant chunks like huge leaves. And I think that looks really pretty. The Zuppa Toscana is done. It only cooked for 1 minute, and this is what it looks like. So you'll see when you take off the lid, there's kind of a red film on there. That's just some fat. If you use spicy sausage, this will be really red. So if you don't like it, you can just use a skimmer and just take off some of that fat off the top. If it doesn't bother you, which it doesn't really bother me, you can just leave it. So to this, we are going to now add 1 bunch of kale that we chiffonaded. And I like to kind of massage it with my fingers or like with my hands a little bit, just to tenderize the kale. So we are going to add 1 bunch, or however much you want. If you don't like that much kale, don't put in that much kale. But we are just going to let this wilt for just a second, so I kind of press it down. We don't want to crush up those beautiful potatoes, so you want to be really gentle. And you can see some of the potatoes have broken, and then that skin on the potato turns into a little ribbon. It's really pretty, just swimming throughout the soup. And that kale only takes about 1 or 2 minutes to really wilt down. And then we'll add the rest of our bacon. Or if you want to save some for the top, you can always do that as well. And then the last ingredient, which is the best, is just 1 cup of heavy cream. If you don't want to do heavy cream, you don't have to. It's really good without the cream, but we really like the cream. Now mix that in. And this is a showstopper. It's delicious. You can add a little bit of extra salt and pepper or crushed red pepper flakes if you like, but we love it just like this. Enjoy. Next up is one of my absolute favorites. It's clam chowder. This one is so good. We're going to start off with 3 slices of thick cut bacon, and I've already gone ahead and crisped that and then leave that in the pot. To this, we are going to add 1/2 of an onion, about 1 cup of diced celery, 5 cups of red potatoes, and I just cut them up into little tiny chunks like that. If you don't want to cut the red potatoes, you can also use the hash brown potatoes, but I just really like the color of the potatoes in this soup. I think it looks really pretty. And just like the other soup, usually 1 red potato is about 1 cup. If they're a little bit smaller, they might be a little bit less than a cup. Wow, it already smells good. All right, to that, we're gonna add 1 tablespoon of minced garlic, 3 teaspoons of salt, 3/4 of a teaspoon of thyme, and 3/4 of a teaspoon of pepper. I'm just gonna dump all of that in there. And then I like to let this saute for just a couple minutes to kind of embed all that bacony goodness into the vegetables. To the vegetable mixture, we are going to deglaze the pot with 3 tablespoons of white cooking wine. This really gives the soup like a really yummy flavor. And then 1.5 cups of chicken broth. So I just use the 1.5 cups of hot water and 1.5 teaspoons of better than bouillon. Then I'm going to take the clam juice out of 2 cans of clams. So here I have a 10-ounce can, and this one is a 6.5-ounce can of clams. I just drained these, so I strained the juice, and I'm going to use that juice. Make sure you keep the clams because we're going to add those later. I'm making rolls as well, so I'm going to take my Thermapen to make sure that they are cooked. I always want to cook my rolls till they're 190 degrees minimum in the center. And that's what I love about cooking with temperature, is that you will never have doughy rolls or bread. As long as you take the temperature, you always know. So put that aside. So to this, we are going to add the clam juice. This is about 1.25 cups. Make sure you strain it, otherwise you might get some like little piece of shell in there. Don't want that. And that's it. Make sure you scrape the bottom of the pot to deglaze it. We don't want it to burn. Gotta lift up all that bacon flavor. I also forgot just to add 1 bay leaf in there, and then you can pressure cook. And now we're going to let this cook for 2 minutes on high pressure with a quick release. All of these recipes are so quick and easy. I really love that. Soup is done. Oh my, and it smells delicious. All right, first thing I'm going to do is just fish out that bay leaf because we don't eat bay leaves. We'll just take that out, throw that away. And then we're going to add the clams from the 10-ounce can and the 6.5-ounce can. I made sure to rinse them because we don't want any little questionable pieces or any little shells. So we're going to add that and just let them kind of warm through. And you can also add the bacon now, or you can add it in, on the top. Like I said, I like to do both. I usually make extra bacon actually for this recipe. Okay, this looks great. I'm going to turn it back on saute mode for just a second, and then we are going to thicken this soup using 3 cups of heavy cream mixed with 6 tablespoons of all-purpose flour. All I do is I take the flour and I whisk it into the heavy cream, and it becomes just kind of like a roux paste, and it's really nice. So we've got our 3 cups of heavy cream mixed with 6 tablespoons of all-purpose flour. Just gonna add that right into the soup. This one's definitely, I don't know, I actually just tasted all of them. You can see them behind me, and I'm like, oh, that one's so good. And then I'll taste the other one, I'm like, oh, that one's way good. They're all so good. So I know that you're gonna love them, especially if you love bacon, heavy cream, and potatoes like I do, because all of these recipes have all of that in them. Okay, and then I just bring this to a boil, and then that will thicken it up really nicely. It's fantastic. I like to serve clam chowder in a sourdough bread bowl or with really crusty classic French bread. It's amazing. Okay, and there you go, enjoy. I hope you loved these Instant Pot soup recipes. If you haven't already, make sure you watch this video. It's my freezer meal soup recipes. So this video is all soups that you prepare beforehand, freeze, and then you just dump the whole bag into the Instant Pot. They're super easy, and I know you'll love them. Okay, thanks for watching, see ya.